Lesson 13.1, Sampling and Bias. This is the beginning of an entire unit called Statistics, which will not look like the algebra we've done so far because it's different. It doesn't get covered in a lot of algebra courses and should. This is what life is all about. What goes on in the world and how do we analyze it? It's all statistics. So we'll come back to that. What types of behavior have we modeled so far? Well, we've done linear. And that's a graph that looks like that. We've done exponential. That's a graph that could look like that. We've done quadratic. That's a graph, could look like that. And we've done rational. We did a tiny bit of graphing on this, could look like that. So we want to model all this behavior. Well, where's the data going to come from? Well, we got to go out and get it. And I've actually done this, and it's kind of fun. And analyzing it's a pain in the butt, but it's good stuff. So we'll back up and get you some definitions first. How do we collect data? Well, let's talk about it. We take samples. Sample is just a small portion of a population. What's a population? Well, that's the entire group you're studying. So if you're working in the solar system on planets, then it'd be all the planets. If you're working in a farm, just your farm, then it'd be all the fruit on your farm or crops on your farm or whatever. So rather than count them all up, we would just take a small sample of the entire population and analyze that and assume that that will help us understand the whole population. Sometimes they say, no, you can't just take a sample, have to analyze all of them. That's a census. A census is where you analyze all of the population. Every 10 years, the United States does a census. And we're supposed to count up everybody, which is virtually impossible, but we do the best we can. So how do we do it? Where do we get the data from? Well, we could get it published data from newspapers who've already done it for us, or just general research. Could be scientists. It's out there in the world and we just go get it. We could sit down and do an observational study. So what is the speed of cars traveling on a road? And we sit down and we take the measurements. We bring a radar gun and we just calculate the speed. Could be an experiment. Now, the observational, we didn't set it up. We just went and measured. The experiment, we set it up and measure. We would go out on the road and actually drive it and send 40 people to drive it at whatever speed they felt comfortable with. That would be the difference between observational and experiment. Or we could do a survey. We just poll a group. So we could ask, 100 people randomly off the street, how fast do you drive on this road? That sort of thing. Survey is where things go wrong. It's where things can get very challenging. Done right, very effective. But there's a lot of problems with it. And that's what we're really going to study. We want to take a random sample. That's just a survey, polling a group, or picking a bunch of apples from an orchard, or a bunch of widgets off an assembly line, or a random bunch of pencils in a classroom. So it could be a survey of anything, but it's some particular thing we're actually trying to study. Well, what are some of the types of random samples? Well, there is simple, stratified, and systematic. I don't want you memorizing these. I want you aware of them and being ready to apply them. So what I did was I typed them all up. And when you work on problems, have that list sitting next to you so you don't have to try and memorize it. You go back and reference it. So that's what's on the next page. And what we're going to add to this are examples, which will help you understand them better. So a simple random sample is just a sample that's as likely to be chosen as any other. So I go into a classroom, I have 25 students. An example would be if I just blindly just picked any students. Now, this would only be applicable to my classroom. If I'm looking for a representative of the whole school, I could just walk down the hall and stand at one of the crossroads and just pull people out randomly. That would be a simple random sample. A stratified random sample is to say, well, let's take a school. I need a random person from each grade. So you break it into grades. You would have the 9th, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. You just pick 5, pick 5, pick 5. It's like a simple random sample, except you use the structure of the school that there are 4 classes to make sure that you get some from each class. If you're asking about parking issues and all you had were freshmen, it would be pointless. If you're asking about lunch and none of the seniors ate lunch in the cafeteria, it would be pointless. So you have things like that. A systematic random sample is used in manufacturing often. And you just pick every 20th item off of a manufacturing line. So it's still random. It's still a good survey of whatever you're manufacturing, but you do it with a particular style so that you know you're just doing it randomly. Now, I keep harping on this. It's a good survey. It's a good sample because there are biases that will pop up in our surveys, and we have to watch out for them. We have to be aware of them. You probably hear the word bias and say, that means I'm discriminating. And you are, but not with evil intent. You're just not doing a good survey. This is not what I would call evil. It means it's a bad sample. So you just have to be careful that you don't just do something simple that works for you and end up getting a bad sample. The first one would be convenience. It just means you made your life easy. For example, I need to survey the whole school, so I just walked out in the hallway and grabbed 5 kids who are always nearby because I know them, and I do that. Another one would be if you're sampling fruit. And you only took 5 apples from the top of the stack. What about the apples on the bottom? What about the apples in the middle? What about the apples that are being crushed? That's not a good sample. You just did what was convenient for you. The other one that pops up often is a voluntary response. Let's see who likes my class. Anybody who wants can respond. So that's an optional survey. Well, the people who respond usually have a reason to respond. Other people might just be pleasantly happy. They don't feel like being bothered. Or they might be really ticked off and they think the teacher's trying to get back at them. Who knows? You can't just assume that when you give an optional survey, a voluntary response, you're going to get good data back. You need to poll everybody and see what everybody has to think. Again, I would keep this sheet when you're doing problems. When we're quizzing or testing, I will have these listed out with examples so that you can use that as a reference when you're solving problems. That's it. Give it a try. Good luck.